All right, folks, welcome to the December episode of the Ujamaa Hour. We're at the last episode of the year. It's been a bit of bumpy ride there, so I know you folks missed me for the last 2 months. We did have some swaps and reschedules and things of that nature as occurs, but we did get one of those guests back for the December segment. So looking forward to that conversation, that interview. And I really look forward to getting our November guest back, Lex Barlow, on a future segment when that is possible. But at the moment, just want to kind of, do a little bit of a wrap for the end of the year. I'm thinking about a lot of things, specifically I'm thinking about the sort of future life of this particular segment and this set of archived conversations. For those who were around for the November period, that I attempted to, or actually November of 2020, that I attempted to kind of turn that set of archives interviews into a podcast and became immediately overwhelmed with the sort of, engineering challenges of that and just that particular archive. So I'm still really working on what life that will have in podcast form. I'm confident that it will have a life. It's just that it's going to take me a little bit of time to get to where I need to be to access that archive and engineer it for you all. So keep on the lookout. The stream is up there. The trailer is up there. The trailer is true. And you have been here, who have been here for the conversations on webcast, know what the substance of those conversations were. And they are certainly continuing to be accessible via Facebook. But obviously, we want that archive to live somewhere else because, who knows when the metaverse will decide to go meta and disappear on us. But yeah, checking in with you all. Mike Strode. I am Michael Tekken Strode, the host of this segment, the Ujamaa Hour. This is your monthly segment where we have an intimate and informal exploration of the Black social and solidarity economy, or an exploration of the Black social and solidarity economy through intimate and informal conversation. You can see that I'm out of practice. Like 2 months is a long way to be away, but that is what we are doing. We are in conversation. We are exploring the dimensions, the scale, the practices, the projects, the experiments that Black people, Black communities are attempting in the context of this larger framing of the solidarity economy, an equitable and a just economy, something beyond the horizon of capitalism, right? That is what we explore in these conversations. And you have been here. You have seen how organizers have tested that exit point, have explored the dimensions of that particular practice, that value system, those definitions, and what it's meant for them, right? The last segment that you caught me on with Hafida, speaking about facilitation and how she sees facilitation and how she sees her work in facilitation advancing this notion of a solidarity economy. So it's not necessarily about, and this is something that has confused guests in the past. It's not necessarily about anyone attempting to be an economist because trained people and professionals have built the world, have imagined the world that exists right now. And we don't need that kind of training in our lives. We need people who can imagine differently, who can imagine more deeply, who can go beyond the systems and practices that exist now. We need people who are unafraid to step into the uncertain, step into the unknown, because we recognize that that Black people, not only in this country, but, globally have historically, needed to step into the unknown and have been on the forefront of advancing truer notions, deeper notions of what democracy actually is in practice, right? So not the theoretical, not the paper democracy, but what does democracy actually look like in practice? And I was yet again in a listening session to, you all know that I love my podcast streams, but I was in a listening session for the Black in Appalachia podcast. And they were having a discussion of the lost cause. For those who are unfamiliar with that phrase, the lost cause, the sort of rise of the Southern Confederacy, the comeback of the Southern Confederacy in story, in narrative, right? The narrative that the South, was fighting for states' rights and was the noblest of all nations in the Western Hemisphere. And so that lost cause that effectively betrays Reconstruction, right? But their lost cause is not what I'm actually here to discuss. What I'm here to discuss is this notion of Reconstruction and what Black people were imagining in that moment. Because during that podcast, they're talking about how Black people are giving us the public school system, are giving us the stretch notion of what democracy could be and what the sort of public contract could be. And that's not something that the world actually had the capacity or the ability to imagine before Black people said, like, everybody should, be able to be able to etch out their own learning. And I actually want to dig beyond that, right? So it's not just about a public school system run by somebody else, because one of the things that I'm reading at the moment is the biography of Septima Clark, September Poinsett Clark, who was at the foundation of Highlander Folk School. And one of the things that you see in Septima Clark's bio is that in her work as an educator, right, in that moment, this moment that is in the era of Reconstruction, in the era of the Great Depression, educators and organizers were one, right? It wasn't like these were two different roles. These were people who were invested in the same thing, right? Educators were part of the base of the sort of civic institution, in society, and they saw a key role of theirs as advancing notions of citizenship in Black communities. As we and also recognizing that we have wrangled over what this notion of citizenship is and what citizenship looks like, what is proper and decent. But there were certainly educators who saw their role as being part of that organizing base in communities to help them enter into society and make their voices heard, make their voices known. And so, this notion of the public school was not simply about, again, somebody else building an institution that they then determined the curriculum for and they determined the outcomes for, but it was really about us being able to determine what are the ideas that we want to engage in the minds and hearts of our young people, and even our adults, right? What are the ideas that we actually want to move forward in our communities and in society? How do we want ourselves to be positioned in Black communities and in the world? That's my riff just about this notion. And it goes to the subtitle today, right? So the subtitle of this particular episode is really going beyond the books, towards these notions of political education, right? What does political education look like when we get beyond this physical institution or the particular books that we are prescribed today, in terms of what education should be? What is the education that we need? What is the education for liberation? So these are things that I'm wrestling with, that I'm thinking about, that I'm nudging on. So in addition to the biography of Septima Clark, I am also continuing to be deep in the tome of the biography of Ella Baker. Also doing my reread of Collective Courage, because I love when you actually see the sort of threads and weaving between the different passages. And next year, right? So what is the horizon for me for 2022? In 2022, I am making a transition from my 20-year career in technology to do program management for Open Collective Foundation. I've teased a little bit about what the work is with Open Collective Foundation, but effectively, I am working to build an infrastructure that can transform the sort of grassroots notions of mutual aid into more sort of institutional infrastructure, moving mutual aid work that is temporal and time bound to the pandemic space, to something that actually is rooted in solidarity economy. And again, has a long horizon beyond this particular pandemic moment. People who are radicalized in this moment, how do we keep them there? How do we help them build lives that are in service to this particular type of work? And not lives that are precarious, not lives that require them to continue to be in service of capitalism while they are stretched and volunteering all of their waking hours over here, but actually actually build lives that where they are doing the work and um, being supported to do the work that they want to continue doing. So I actually don't know what that looks like, and I'm experimenting. I'm actually building a pathway out and into this particular role, and ultimately trying to determine if there are other experiments that it allows me to conduct. And so continuing to move this broadcast forward and continuing to transform this archive of interviews into something that can be a continuous space of learning, and can serve people in more meaningful ways, and can have a life outside of the webcast version is certainly one of those particular experiments that I'll be engaged in developing over the coming year, in addition to my learning year. So, you've heard me announce in prior moments on this broadcast, the Aorta Fellowship. So I'll be doing my facilitation fellowship in the early half of the year with Anti-Oppressive and Oppression Resource and Training Alliance. So I'm really looking forward to that, and what sort of collaborations happen in that space with these other facilitators that I'll be working with. I have taken up the Sociocracy Academy, so I'll be continuing to shape and sculpt my understanding of governance, and using that in practice to help some organizations that are working in the cooperative and solidarity economy space to figure out what governance structure is meaningful and valuable to them, and just again, more experiments to come, more learning to come. I had an opportunity to meet with one of my comrades in Cooperation for Liberation Study and Working Group, Tiff, who's working on what she calls a DIY PhD. And we just had an opportunity to share her process, understand, what does that mean for you? And I got an opportunity to kind of understand what it might mean for me if I adopted that framework. We come from two distinct types of educational backgrounds, and just kind of sharing mine. I have been sharing with my folks in Co-op for Lib that I have an aversion to formal schooling. Despite what people actually think of me, right, when they meet me, I made it as far as an associate's degree, and then I didn't necessarily give up. I just wasn't really interested in kind of pursuing beyond that, because it wasn't, there were other things that I could do in my professional trajectory that would get me further. And I just focused on those, and those were paying the bills. And so I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to do. And I got my learning other ways, right? It's something that has actually haunted me, right? This is the sort of vulnerable moment. It's something that actually has I've wrestled with. I've been, why is it that I feel this particular way? And, why is my mind so spread that I don't feel like I can focus inside of this institution? I haven't actually answered that question. This learning year is actually my opportunity to answer that question, because none of that is institutional learning. Those are self-assigned. This is an unschooling pathway into governance that I'm working on. And so I look forward to using this broadcast to invite you all along on that journey with me. And I look forward to sharing my findings as I embark on this learning year. And we'll see what other opportunities I'll have to share that. So look forward to, I'll be developing some content for the Post-Growth Fellowship for Post-Growth Institute. So I've got 2 pieces of written work that'll probably be, actually one might be written, one might be interview. So I have 2 pieces of work that I want to release on that. One is going to be about movement infrastructure, and it's just my examination of the business model at Open Collective Inc. and Open Collective Foundation, combined with my learnings from the Colonet Collaborative and that type of infrastructure building. And then I've heard a term that I adore on the Emergent Strategy podcast from Candace Montgomery called liberatory logistics. So I had this earlier phrase of movement infrastructure, and Candace said liberatory logistics. And I was like, whoa, that's the combination right there. And then Caroline Willard at Open Collective said radical administrators. And I was like, those are the 3 framings, right? Movement infrastructure, liberatory logistics, and radical administration. These are the things that I am most interested in pulling together, and that actually match with my professional career in technology, and my notions of liberation and the other organizing work that I've done within Healthy Food Hub and Black Oak Center and Temple of Applied Theosophy and all of these other spaces that I've traveled through. So the merging of my identities is 2022, the one me, and I'm looking forward to walking on that journey with you all and having you share your journeys with me. But today we are here to engage in another exploration. So we had Black Yield Institute on this podcast, probably almost a year ago. Eric Jackson was on here sharing some of the inception and the historical trajectory and the work of the Black Yield Institute. And I did a call out, about a year ago where I asked all of my alumni from the Ujamaa Hour, hey, can you tell me somebody that you think I should have on this podcast? And Eric responded with a slew of names, but among those names was Lee Jordan, who is the Director of Operation and Culture at Black Yield Institute. Lee Jordan is also an organizer, mentor, entrepreneur, and currently, began working in community early on as a mentor. Starting way back in middle school, has been engaging in a number of leadership roles in the course of Black Yield Institute. And Lee is going to be with us this evening to talk about food sovereignty, Black liberation, and just about anything else that we can dig into. And I'm looking at my interview panel, and I think I actually lost. Oh, there we go. So I'm going to get my interview panel again. There we go. Let me see if I can. Whoop. I don't want to do the add left. I got to fix that. Ooh, all right. Yes, and there we go. I'm over here breaking the tools. So we've got Lee in the green room, and as I got a bit distracted, I broke the tools. So now I can go ahead and get back into the interview pane, and then we will dig into a dialogue with Lee. And I think we might have lost Lee again. Um, all right, folks. Well, while I wait for Lee to drop back in just a moment here. Also happening this coming year is going to be, I'm looking to do a travel year. So as a part of my work with Open Collective Foundation, I'm hoping to actually float around and touch base with a number of cities and really get closer to the mutual aid work that they are doing because part of my role within Open Collective Foundation as a program manager is to find out what the needs are of these projects and support those needs with training, support those needs with connection to other apparatus, other, opportunities. And so, if you have suggestions to that, feel free to go ahead and drop those in the comments area. And, I'll be able to touch base with you on those things as we go. And I'm going to try again to pull Lee in from the green room. So let me just see if can get this interview window up. Oh, and I think I have lost again. All right, so I think we got you in the segment, Lee.
I'm sorry, man. I'm not sure what happened. It kind of just went black on me and froze for a very long time. So I was trying to disconnect and reconnect. I'm sorry about that.
Okay. All right, no problem. Well, we are in the segment, so that's what matters most. So I was going ahead and making your introduction as Director of Operation and Culture, organizer, mentor, and entrepreneur. Um, So I want to actually start off this segment in a different way, which is a question that we use in some of our facilitation sessions for Solidarity Economy, which is what does the economy mean to you and what has it meant to your family? And so I just want to, open up space for that and allow you to just kind of dig into that before we get into your background.
Man, uh, That's one. That's a very good question. Um, I think for me, man, economy. It always makes me think about just the breakdown of the word and think about the word eco and think about eco being like ecosystem as in your home. And just understanding community and how all things work are connected together and should operate together. But also, I think there's just man, I think there's just magic in a way, and I'm sorry, you'll hear my baby girl in the back a little bit.
All
There's
is
just
well.
magic in a way that folks organize inside of economies and communities, the contributions folks make to just kind of drive things in the way that they should be. So that's a general answer, and I'd be happy to say more if need be. But yeah, if I had to like just off the top of my mind, that's what I would say.
Okay, okay. And how has the economy treated or addressed your family? Like, I mean, what were the notions that you had when as growing up, you know, about the economy? What was this your relationship to that?
Oh man, it's I think how has addressed me and how it has addressed my family is two different things. Growing up, the economy was in my neighborhood in particular just very intense. A lot of growing up to do at an early age, and then when you're talking about on a larger scale, with my knowledge today, I think about the different grocery stores that were in my neighborhood. I think about the ways banks were intertwined in my neighborhood, how my community understood the banking system, and thinking about how schools were treated. You know what I mean? And it's really at that age on a smaller scale, even understanding the difference between county school protocols and city school protocols, and having to be clear that you're inside of this kind of imaginary line where these rules apply to you. And then fast forward, having a child now who has been fortunate enough to operate somewhat outside of at least that line, but even still being affected by economy, man, in ways at this age that I thankfully aren't detrimental, but definitely can be challenging and definitely can be obstacles at times. So
Hmm.
yeah, that's the gist of it. I would say for me,
Okay.
for at least how things have affected us.
Absolutely. So I always like to segue into the every hero has an origin story. So you know you've talked a little bit about the way that you came up. So maybe just take us through your origin story that creates the person who you are now. That is now rooted in this work of Black Yield Institute. Like, where did you come from? What did you go through? How did you get here?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sorry, man, I'm transitioning from to a different room.
Okay.
Um, Absolutely, man. So, I was born and raised East Baltimore, Maryland. Um, I grew up right off of Bel Air Road, which is on the east side of Baltimore. Um, Grew up in a neighborhood that, like I said before, was pretty intense. Had its goods and its bads. Learned a lot early. Um, didn't have much. Single parent home. Have a sister who I grew up with in that home. And man, really, I don't want to sound cliche, but just a very typical story of someone from just my neighborhood. Just man, I'm not even sure how to even like when you think about it and process it backwards, it's a little interesting, man. But yeah, just raised by a single mom. Spent a lot of time with my grandparents who lived also in East Baltimore, not too far from my home. Spent a lot of time in that neighborhood, which is the Sedonia area. And in that time, man, just really learned a lot of growth, experienced a lot of different things. Was fortunate enough to be a part of a community center now, but at the time it was known as the PAL Center or the Good Now PAL Center, if you will, off of St. Clair Lane. And that they provided several opportunities for me just to meet folks, be connected to folks, learn more, and just the opportunities to be outside of the environment that we were growing up in. And in that, Brother Eric, who's our servant director, was actually one of the counselors at the PAL Center with us. He was my counselor. When he came in, he was 19 at the time. I won't say his age now, but he was 19 at the time. But just a very sharp brother, and I gravitated towards it. And we kind of just started to grow into each other. And I think It's a small story, but he was giving us what would be discipline, not allowing us to leave outside or go play until we finish an assignment he'd given us. And I think the class just kind of was in an uproar and just kind of giving pushback. And by the time maybe he finished and sat down, my was done. And we, from that moment, it's been like, there's something you have and there's something I see, what I mean, that has kept us connected. But fast forward after our time there, I went to college and was able to get a degree in this philosophy and computer science. But then in between my years of college, I worked at the Pal Center as a counselor myself, and being able to have that opportunity, had the chance to meet up with Brother Eric, who I had to explain that I mimicked so much of his style. And he was my first order in what is now a small business. But out of that relationship, he just kind of introduced me to the food work, really connected me to my blackness and just understanding the different histories of our community and how things have gone. And just really one of the main things I would say in that space was learning how to identify an actual problem. We were always clear that in order to address the solutions, you have to be able to truly identify what the problem is. And a lot of that understanding came from political education, or for what it looked like as political education for us, which is really sometimes, sharing a book, sharing information, or just sitting down, having dialogue, watching films together, just digesting and processing together. A lot of that stuff feeds us as political education, man. So I learned a lot in that space and was able to be connected to the food work a little bit more. And then essentially came on to Black Yield as a community organizer in 2018. So one of the first employees of Black Yield. It's still funny saying that now, but one of the first employees of Black Yield Institute as a community organizer for the Cherry Hill Urban Community Garden, which is one of our branches of the work that we do. Um, but I guess lastly, I'll say how I got connected to the food work was pretty simple. In the neighborhood I grew up in, I had what was known as, or what is today still, a food depot. And that was right behind our home. And when you're growing up in these neighborhoods and you understand your area and what's around you and how things are and what they look like, things don't become alarming, right? It becomes the norm to be around or shop at a grocery store that has sometimes wilt produce or sometimes things going bad or expired foods. You just know how to, you learn how to make your way around those things and adapt. You learn which ones to pick and which ones not. So it really was just not the highest grade of a grocery store, but it was what I known at the time as a grocery store. And that really didn't change for a very long time. And then fast forward to college, I went to Spain to visit one of my best friends. And in Spain, at that time, I was a big fan of what is known as Sunny D. And I went to a bodega. I bought some Sunny D with my euros, and with that Sunny D, I tasted it, and I spit it out. It was disgusting, and I learned at that moment that folks in Europe don't use any high fructose corn syrup, and that's also like that in several countries, except the United States. So once that hit me, it really made me kind of go into this rabbit hole of trying to understand how we could be some of the most knowledgeable and wealthiest countries, you know what I mean, but not have enough sense to take something that's killing us, or you know what I mean. So I had to really find a correlation, understanding my introduction to being clear on what capitalism is rooted in and how far it's gone back, and being clear on what food sovereignty and food apartheid looks like, and just all of those things, man. And then lastly, just returning home from college and moving out of my neighborhood into the county, which was Towson at that time. And now I'm learning Whole Foods and Trader Joe's and all these different spaces that show up differently than I've seen before. And it really kind of, at the moment, at first introduction was very cool. You know what I mean? To see all these different color peppers now, it's no more just green peppers. You got mist sprays down on the produce every so often, even when you're not there. So it's a whole different experience at the grocery store, and it gives you this feeling that you're eating cleaner and you know what I mean, learning to have a different diet and addressing food differently. But what bothered me was that it was only 5 miles away from my house, and I didn't get to understand or see this until the age of 23 at that time. So that for me was one of those things where it wasn't just about learning how to do better with my own food and being clear about the food systems and how food works, and being able to educate myself and educate others around me. I think it was more so changing the system and paving something for folks in our own communities that we could all work on and all be proud of, which is just cooperative economics and being able to educate each other through political education, and take control of all of our own systems, resources, food, land, and water. So yeah, man, I know it's a long spell, but yeah, that's my journey up to this point.
That's all good. That's all good. As you were recounting that journey, you know, one of the things that I was thinking about, and it came up in a conversation that I was having today. We were talking about radicalizing events, and in that particular instance, I recounted one specific, event, the work that I did with Healthy Food Hub, Baba Fred Carter, Dr. Jafunza Wright Carter,
Sir.
and the whole Black Oak Center fam. And the sort of the 10-year stretch there was the sort of radicalizing event for me for thinking ecosystemically. But certainly I can go back and recount like other milestones of radicalization, specifically like some religious work that I did with a space called the Temple of Applied Theosophy, which was very rooted in a sort of black nationalist politic. And then before that, I mean, as a very young person, seeing the premiere of Malcolm X at the theater, and changing all of the sort of literature that I read, the destruction of Black civilization. So I'm just wondering, like, when you think about those sort of your trajectory, like, what are the milestones? You talked about one milestone of being, of meeting Eric at this youth center. But what are there other specific milestones that you're like, these are the events that really kept me locked in and made me actually want to do this for the rest of my life?
Yeah, absolutely, man. That I didn't that I failed to share was I think along with any education, right? Education is really just knowledge until you have the experience. And I think a part of this whole journey of understanding is food and understanding food in our communities and how our food systems are structured was really learning to change my own diet and trying to understand and step out my comfort zone, and have some growth in the areas of like if you were to tell somebody about these food systems and how to be different and how to find an alternative. What alternative could you give them? You know what I mean? Because everything wouldn't work for everybody, but what could you offer? And at the time, I was practicing the same habits that I was starting to kind of defy. So I went on a journey with my who's now my wife. I went on a journey, and for 3 months I ate no meat. I've grown up on fish and seafood, but primarily at that time we were prioritizing vegetables, fruits, just beans, anything that would be filling protein fill, and then of course infusing my fish. I can't let my fish go. But I did give up on the meat, and that was for the reasons of learning what it would do for my body, learning how my body would process differently, how would I feel, just really trying to have the direct correlation between what does the diet change and what does your body respond to it feels like. And for 3 months, man, I felt amazing. My joints, energy, just everything, just felt a completely different side of what felt to me like a lighter body. You know what I mean? Food's not sitting on me as long, and the issue was that I was not able to cook those foods at that time. I wasn't good at that. I've been frying chicken and I've been doing just the norm of things for a very long time. So changing my diet learned me that I need the education to also learn how to use these different foods that are coming in and how they could be full and make them you know what I mean, just into good meals. And my wife left for one weekend, and I had no car at that time. I was in the shop, and one of my friends came and got me and took me to Popeyes because there was no food in the house. And I went to Popeyes, man, and made a terrible decision to get a two-piece and some fries of chicken, and I ate that one box. But I tell folks this, and I can't stress this enough. It's not over exaggeration. My stomach for the next week was the worst thing I've ever felt. Right? It was cramps. It was just really completely opposite of what I was just explaining, and it was just very clear that the only thing different here has been that you know what I mean. I took a chance and ate something out of what I said I wasn't going to eat, but that from that point on, I knew for sure that I felt the way about the food system. I felt the way about the foods that are going through the food system, having this understanding of capitalism now and being clear about how greedy folks can be inside of these food areas and grocery stores, and recycling of foods, and using bad foods and bad methods to make the foods and process food. So a lot of that stuff, man, just kind of put it all together for me. So once being connected to Black Youth Institute, I was able to just practice all of those things, educating folks, practice teaching folks how to cook the foods, growing the foods, and just really having a relationship with the land. And I always say returning to having a relationship with the land, because Black folks, man, have controlled land and own land. At one point, over 12 million acres, 12 to 14 million acres in the U.S. So just that's one of those moments, at least, that kept me locked in. And outside of that, it's just been community. It's just been community, seeing how folks respond, being able to move the needle from A to Z, meeting somebody who's like have just kind of rejecting your point of view at the time, just based off of their norm, but keeping that relationship going, keeping building on that relationship, and having that small opportunity to connect with them, educate them in the ways that see fit as well, right? Because it's not always going to happen with the with the PowerPoint. It's not going to happen with the book. Sometimes it's going to happen with y'all just kicking it and rapping, having some words. Sometimes it happen over some cards, man. I play some cards, you know what I mean? So it's really just being able to have that opportunity, and then watching the transition from there has been one of those major things for me. Watching folks change their diet, watching folks understand the food system, watching folks be more careful about their grocery stores and their choices of foods, and what they're investing in their foods, and also seeing folks connect with locally Black farmers and folks who are also doing the same similar work that we're doing. So it's just kind of amazing, man. It's one of those things that goes slow, but slow progress is still progress, So yeah, man, that's a few of those, and I'm sure there's been plenty along the way.
Yeah.
But just those kind of always have kept me in the same space and kept me grounded. And I know for sure that this is the work I want to be known to have done and been a part of as we move forward. So
Yes. So one of the things that I heard there from you, that I'm connecting to like cultural organizing, and one of the things that I remember being connected to with the Healthy Food Hub was just that notion of the food experience, right? So when and folks, I mean, may or may not believe, but right when I started the Healthy Food Hub, I was a vegetarian, but I ate a lot of Progresso soup cans, just because, like
right,
I didn't, I knew how to do a certain meal prep. Like I had a really good vegetarian chili recipe. I made a really good, jambalaya one time. But it wasn't like I was experimenting with much, or cooking really robust meals. But in the course of working in the Healthy Food Hub, and I mean, I started there as a member of the parent council. They decided that they wanted to open the hub at the school. I started at the ground floor and said, okay, sure, we'll help you launch this thing. And with me, it was like, oh, I'm going to help you launch this thing. And after a year, I'm gonna make my exit. And 9 years later,
there
but
you go.
but effectively, like the beautiful thing about being in the Healthy Food Hub was that food experience. Like I got to figure out where kale fit in my life. I got to figure
Yeah,
out, how to prepare, how to prepare leeks, how to work
yeah,
with, artichokes. Like, I mean, all of these things were like new experiences. And because I was in there all the time and I had a food salary, it was like, oh, okay, well, just go pick you out, your $15 worth of produce. And, if you see something new, pick it up, I mean, and you'll,
right,
you'll find a recipe somewhere online or in a cookbook.
absolutely.
And effectively, like that experience of just being in a space where the food opportunities and options were abundant,
Yeah,
was grew my palate. Like, I mean, to the extent that like my daughter came over here recently and stole the rest of my pot of gumbo that I'd made. I had some vegetarian gumbo, and she came over here, scooped the rest of the pot out. So I mean, hey,
yeah.
happy to share. So I wanted to connect that to just any further thoughts you have about what cultural organizing means, because I see in your title you're the director of operation and culture, so just
hmm
how you understand cultural organizing, and also maybe how you connect that to political education,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, man. So for me, cultural organizing is really one being so rooted into community that the organizing doesn't always even look like organizing. I think that's a major piece of it. But also understanding what's actually happening in your community, being able to do the research for it, being able to reach out to folks who have come before you, being clear of shoulders that you're standing on, and folks who are who've paved the way for you and made things clear. But essentially, man, that there's I'm trying to think about the best way it comes to mind. In Black Yield specifically, we take pride in creating a system, or what we call is a container for liberation, right? So we take pride in creating the container for the thing we want to see happen, right? You wouldn't put a firecracker inside of a paper towel roll, right? Because that would go a lot worse than an actual holster for a firecracker. But it's being clear that we want something. We want our liberation. Well, I'm sorry. We want our organization to be completely liberated. Have folks a lot of space to be themselves, be who they are, no matter what community, what culture, and what preference, and also have that ability to be educated enough to go into any community and practice organizing and being able to connect with folks as you. And I think a lot of what happens is folks are so used to folks coming in community, just kind of being tricked, being insulted, being offended, and really just not being prioritized as people, but more so as stories, or more so just as points to prove. And a lot of what we're doing is being connected in community how we know how to. Like it's our cultural way. We listen to music together, we play music together, we cook together, we grow together, we eat together. And I want to be clear that these aren't things that we are making up as an institution. These are things that our ancestors who've come before us have done. We're not out of any means of comfort, or we're not trying anything that hasn't already been part of what has kept folks connected inside of any Black community or Black space thus far. So really, when you talk about organizing culturally, I think it's just that. I think it's using the ways that's always been. We often talk about the concept of Sankofa, which means to return back to it, to go and fetch it. And I think part of that is always being rooted in who's been in your community and how your community is operated. So you'll know what what culturally you should be doing there. And us being Black folks, political education is something that is not always going to be received in ways that folks understand education to come as an avenue. It's going to be received, as I said before, and sometimes just in regular dialogue, sometimes in the heated argument, sometimes in singing, sometimes in passing. But I think at the core of educating or being connected to anybody inside of cultural organizing. And I think this is the thing I really want to stress the most, is that we have to understand how crucial our relationships are. A lot of folks think, Brother Art, this is another thing, a gem that Brother Art gave me a while back, but a lot of folks assume that the smallest object inside of our communities, economies, are the individuals. And it's not the individual, it's actually the relationship. Nothing on this earth can exist without one. It's been connected to something before and will be connected to something after it's gone. So when you understand that, you'll be clear about how crucial it is to be able to build a relationship and maintenance those relationships and what that yields, right? It makes no sense to try and do anything or take action in the community if you haven't talked to folks and understood what folks have asked and what folks need and what folks understand to be as an issue and solution, right? So it's just really being clear about you identify the relationships you should be building, and you be clear about how you build those relationships, and you build them in a way that, like I said, should not be we have to sit across from each other. I have a tie on and you have a tie on, and we'll do intros and resumes. But really, let's connect, right? Let's sit down. Let's have lunch. Let's eat our food together. Let's cook together and let's talk. You know what I mean? Let's talk about how we can really be in relationship. Let's talk about how our worlds can benefit each other. And I don't mean that in a term of being used, but a term of understanding the means of a relationship, is that there has to be something that folks bring to the table here. We're clear in any relationship that we build that there has to be a means of exchange. So if you're doing for us, of course, we're also doing for you. It does not always look like monetary, but sometimes it may look like what we all say: share me in your network, or connect me with these folks, connect me with other folks who are doing the work. So, man, I really just stressing the issue of inside of cultural organizing, you have to focus on the relationship. You have to focus on the community, and you have to have ears and have had the experience of being inside of that community, and have to be a part of that culture. I think that's a amazing piece. I think that's one of those amazing pieces that folks don't want to have to deal with, but it's just part of the work. You spend enough time in the community, you can definitely become a part of it. But and I'm sorry, I don't want to ramble, but this is the last piece I'll say. We in our organization study Maroons. And if you ever studied the Maroon folks, you understand that they were some of the best, if not the best, protectors of their communities inside of these swamp lands and what would be perceived as unlivable spaces to practice their liberation and take care of themselves. So when you come into our communities, I think you have to deal with that layer of what would be vetting, right? That layer of what would be who are you and what are your intentions? Why are you here? But inside of that, a relationship is built, and if intentions are genuine, and if intentions are clear, man, I think the organizing happens naturally. I think that's the piece of culture, to being able to recognize where the cultures connect or where they disconnect.
Yes, and I do listen to I have listened to you all on the podcast, and I do remember that keystone phrase: the smallest unit of organizing is the relationship.
Yeah.
So yes, I received that, lift that up as a gem, for other folks to digest. And revisiting back to this to this study of maroons, so I was sitting with someone from our Co-op for Live team the other day, and they were talking about their studies over the next year that they're engaged in, and they're engaged in basically their own self-guided study of marriage, right? So definitely like
Right.
looking at the Maroons as a point in time, but just looking at what's the study of marriage, what is actual, like, what's the contemporary examples of marriage, what's the contemporary examples of liberation and contemporary examples of escape. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering, if you all are like thinking in this moment, like, what is marriage in this moment? What is the maroon activity, the maroon escape in this moment?
Hmm.
Yeah.
I think that's the question, man. I think, well, not I think, I'm sure that and what the Maroons were doing and creating their own liberations and the means to protect it is something that is a way that we have chosen to adopt ourselves, which is there are systems out there that we do not fit in and that work directly against us, and have been and are built to work that way. So we're clear that they're not broke. While we're clear about that, there's no means to go and try to destruct or attack or dismantle a system that's been built brick by brick. You know what I mean? So we look at the Maroons and be clear about Maroons did not Maroons made an alternative. Maroons created the community and the liberation that they wanted to see. They did that inside of spaces that they chose to do it in, that they made, well, like I said it before, we perceived as uncomfortable, but livable spaces. Being able to grow food near swamps, being able to, learn mean fishing and feeding your families, and even being able to protect it, being clear about how you even take folks through the routes to your land. So I think in today for us, I think the maroonage is just that, right? Understanding how crucial our processes are to how we build our organization and how we're and how we're being clear how we're operating this organization to be able to achieve the goal of black land and full sovereignty in the future, but also something that is going to continue to outlive us, and do more work after we're gone as well. So that's one of those things where it's like everything ceases at some point, right? But blueprints, theories, understandings, lessons, all of those things are still around. And all of those things are just as any instructions would be. You pick it up, you read it, you practice. That's what I would say right now, man. Just clear, creating those systems that we want to see, being clear on how we create our own liberation, and being clear about those who only being connected to those who liberations are bound with ours. Being clear that we're not looking for help, but if you don't have a reason for us to be liberated that would benefit you as well, then the relationship would not be justifiable to ourselves. And like I said before, Maroons were very clear about that. Even the understanding that they they wouldn't even take anybody to their village the same way. If you were new, you weren't going to have the same pathway to get back and forth to the homeland, because of the means of you were still in your process of vetting, and they were sure that if anybody figured out what they were building or how they were building, that they would have more trouble on their hands. So you're talking about one person versus a community, and it's just that understanding, man, being able to be self-sufficient, self-sustaining, create our own liberations, and live and live a liberated just community, and expand and continue to infuse that in all spaces that we're allowed to be connected to or working.
Yeah, you gave me a good segue here in that you talked about the people that you talk about people traveling to maroon spaces or liberated zones through
Yeah.
different pathways. So I am personally very interested in onboarding. I'm interested in how we draw people into the work. And you talked a little bit earlier about like custom crafted like political education, just knowing the context
Yes,
that these
sir.
people are coming from. So I'm really interested in maybe the way that you all are thinking about onboarding or orientation inside of Black Yield Institute, and what work you have done on that, and maybe also like what are the values that you're trying to help instill in people as maybe they're onboarding into deeper levels and layers of participating in
Yeah.
Black Yield.
Yeah. So to answer your first question, man, or onboarding right now looks like a lot of literature, a lot of political education. We've created a package self-taught course that contains four different lessons, if you will, and three are self-taught. The last will be in person with ourselves, and that would be the first exposure of us in physical. But the course allows folks to just be connected to all of the readings that we feel are necessary for you to even be a part of our organization. Read all of the work, the bodies of work that we've put out as an organization, being clear about what we're connected to. Get your introduction to Black Youth Institute, how we operate. Be clear about why you're here, right? Answer. So what we do is what would be quizzes or kind of like just a number of questions with every course that not only do we want to be clear that you're retaining and being clear about what the work is, but where are you with the work? And it's not an expectation of you have to be pure and solid with it, right? It has to be an expectation of what your intentions are and how you're moving in that space. If you know what I mean, when you're reading the Paulo Freire, please tell us, you know what I mean, what you're taking from it. Please tell us what you're processing, and then we'll know where our relationship begins with you and how things are going to build from there. But even inside of that, we have simple stuff, man, that we like to practice. But we have what we call 5 seconds. I'm sorry, 30 seconds of fame, where we pull out a rug that we've had for quite some time, and we ask folks to step up and spend 30 seconds showing some gift or some talent, whether it's singing, telling a joke, right? But these are things that you wouldn't see inside of institutions that we've been groomed and been connected to. And we're clear that when you want to liberate something, right, you have to create something differently than we've seen thus far. But even inside of that, it's engaging with the team. It's engaging with our spaces and how we operate, having a tour of the community, meeting elders in the community. It's understanding the key components of the community, where the schools are, where the hospitals are, who our partners are, who we're working with, just the whole layout. And then outside of that, man, it's we spend some time at the end of every orientation, just kind of having a follow up session where we connect with folks, and are able to just kind of I don't want to say it as like drilling them, right, but asking them a bunch of questions, man, because they spend a lot of time processing a lot of information that are either going to do two things. You know what I mean, propel them into what their intentions want to be and move into the space of the moving work, or make them question whether or not this work is for them. And both are okay with us. However, we want to be sure that that happens inside of the orientation process, and want to be sure that not only do we have the answer, but you, as being a part of the work, have the answer as well. But even to answer your further question around what kind of things do we want to see inside of folks as they come and be a part of our political education series and things of that nature. I think for us, I think one is the key thing I talked about before with the help or being clear about intentions. We don't want folks to come and because they want to help out people or try to do work. We want folks' liberation to be bound together. We want us to all have a reason to want liberation together. That's number one. Number two, our goal is to create folks who can reproduce or reciprocate the work that we're doing here. However, it may not look like the food work, but it may look like movement work inside of a different community, in a different country. But it's folks who have been connected to Black Youth Institute who are around the world doing the work. One of the ways we're doing that right now is what's called our Fire Kit program. And the Fire Kit stands for Fire Keepers in Training. And what we do there is allow folks to come and be partners with us individually inside of the movement work. We have 7 different areas we operate out of, that allows folks to work alongside all of the organizers and get clear about how that portion of this movement work works, and understand what our liberation looks like, understand what our ethos is, and understand how all of this stuff actually looks in the physical and how they have a role inside of it as well. Outside of that, when folks graduate to becoming firekeepers, then they will always be able to have that work of what movement work looks like, clear framework of what organizing look like, clear understanding of why sovereignty is a necessity, and then you move into these different spaces, and always having a direct connection, or always having a Black Youth Institute as a resource. So we allow ourselves to become what we like to say. Um, Immortal, right? One of those things that's going to live for a long time. And immortal is a strong word, but immortal in the sense where even when, like I said before, something's gone in the physical, the frameworks, the theories, the understandings, and the practices stay around, man, and they circle back and play themselves back into community. So. Yeah, that's one of the ways with our Fire Kit. And the last piece of what I say is we have a whole political education series, if you will, that allows folks to do organizing or understanding the food systems, but just different courses that 15-week courses that folks can take and be a part of the work. And man, we build a lot of relationships inside of that. We meet a lot of folks, we get connected to a lot of folks, and we're able to educate each other in the means of us sharing knowledge and gaining knowledge from folks that are coming into the work. And one thing I love about St. Carham is that the range of age. We've had folks who are elders begin in the program, and then we've also had folks who are just youth be a part of it. So when you think about that, you're really reaching community. You're really folks are hearing you, and even if they don't understand today, they're making an effort and opportunity. They're making an effort to seize the opportunity to understand and learn more, and just become a part of the work. So hopefully that answers everything that that I was trying to hope and answer. But yeah, man, that's the major piece for us.
Absolutely, absolutely. And as we nearing the end, you've already previewed a lot of what's happening with the firekeepers in training, and with your onboarding. Are there other pieces of the of Black Yield's current work that you just want to let folks know about at the moment?
Absolutely. Please, I shared briefly about St. Carhammer Academy. Please check St. Carhammer Academy out. Please become a part of the work. Take a course. The information is amazing. It's infused with several assignments and different things that are going to challenge you and allow you to grow yourself and learn more about what's going on in the community. Of course, the Fire Kit that I spoke of before, which is just fire keepers in training. If you're interested in being a part of the movement work, learn how things operate and run and out in the Black Industry organization. Um, but really, primarily, and I say primarily because it's the main pathway that a lot of folks become connected to the work. But volunteer. We were formerly owning, or we were formerly stewarding a 1.25 acre space in a community that had 27 community beds, 3 or 4 different growing beds, and just really being able to connect with folks, celebrate on the land, grow. So just be a part of the work. I think that's one of the best ways we've asked folks to be near us. Is just while we're doing the work as well, so we could just be in community and learn from each other. But generally, right now, that's what we have going on. Keep an eye out for any of the research we put out. We put out our 5-year report out recently that talks about all the work that we've done over the last 5 years. We put out our market study, Cherry Hill Food Market Study, which talks about the readiness of folks in Cherry Hill for a grocery store and what it looks like to control our own foods. So yeah, that's what it is right now. Things are winding down. We're at the bottom of the year, so we're really preparing for just kind of getting things going next year. But yeah, that's the work, and those are the things I want folks to stay connected with and check out at least right away. And check out our websites and look out for us launching all of our merchandise, cups, shirts, hoodies, hats. A lot of stuff has launched, but we also adding some more stuff as well. So
Okay, and so you've shared that you want people to be shoulder to shoulder with you all in this work of cultural transformation and communal transformation. Are there are there other things beyond sort of that shoulder to shoulder support that Black Yield needs right now? You know, is it, if you were to broadcast, like, what are the things that like would best help you all advance the work, even beyond, you know, I mean, that participation. If there are other things that we haven't covered.
Yeah, man. Our work is primarily around Black and Brown folks in poor communities. So we aren't shy about asking folks to go in their wallets, donate, or connect us to for anybody who what I mean, wants to donate and be a part of the work, or learn more about the work. But really, that's the major thing for us, right? Connecting us, building relationships with us, and connecting us to folks and helping us build different relationships. Having folks donate, come out, learn about the work, sharing the work with somebody else. Um, yeah, man, it's really the general, but those things are like the biggest things, that are the biggest ways that folks can be helpful with us. We're excited to be planning how we're planning, and we're excited to be able to really roll out the work that we've been projecting for the last 3 years. So it's getting amazing. We're moving into a great space, but please share our work, share our podcast, share our just any media and any content that comes from us. And please make it to our celebrations. We have a great time, man. I would love to see more folks there. I'll be sure to keep an eye out for any of the promotional stuff on the Black University Instagram or any other social media account. But yeah, man, that right now that's where support is very heavy. Just keeping us connected, keeping us connected to folks in different relationships.
Absolutely. And I certainly want to go ahead and make, you know, a firm endorsement that folks should be checking out that podcast. You all get you're pretty hilarious on there, you know, so there's a lot of laughter, a lot of joy happening. And what's the name of the main eatery down there? What was it called? Is it like an Asian spot that everybody go to?
Oh, the Korean spot that we talk about a lot.
Yeah.
It's called the Big Carryout. They call it the Big Carryout.
The big carryout. Yeah, yeah,
The Big
absolutely. You
Carryout.
know,
Yeah.
I am very into sort of, you know, regional dialects, regional language, regional slang. So, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
certainly, you know, it was very intriguing as you all were talking about the big carryout, and then I was remembering my one of the folks who I work with at Healthy Food Hub, Austin, who's from St. Louis. You know, where they call it, they like, you going to the Chinaman tonight? You know, the
Yeah.
first time I heard him say that, I was like, what?
Yeah, man. That's the part I love about the work, man. Is that the broader we get, the more folks we connect to in different states, in different spaces, man. I'm learning everything. A lot of the things in our communities look the same, man. Just have different language and different names for it. And I think that's what allows us to be able to connect how we connect, and share the space how we share the space, and work together how we work together. So, yeah, man. We got the big carry out on our side.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, what I want to close on is just this vision of the world. So, you know, we are all kind of, you know, organizing and strategizing and working towards a particular vision of the world, particular set of values. The last time we had Eric on here, you know, he brought the painting. So, you know, he came out. When I asked him this, he was like, "Can I share my screen?" And then he starts showing this painting. So, you know,
Oh yeah,
I
I got you. I got you.
absolutely. So, you know, if you were to share what your vision of the world, if the things that we are working on are successful, what's the world look like on the other side of this organizing, this liberation, this labor?
Yeah, man. I think the world. I think the black economy is booming. I think folks are uh, prioritizing ownership all over the place in real estate and resources. I think folks are practicing on self sustainability, learning how to take care of their families and ways of growing their own foods, and just being clear about being more connected to nature. I think COVID taught us that. And I think the organizing work has shown where the community support and the community organizations have come into play, and how much for community and better with community that they've been. Um, but also, man, I see I see I just see black folks working together, man, in a way where the black dollar is just growing, and resources are everywhere, and folks are just, man, really just like regaining control of everything that they've had to kind of subscribe to as part of being connected to our community or socialized to our economies that we know them for today. So, man, I see a lot of undoing happening over the next couple of years, inside of a lot of different spaces. But if all is perfect and all goes well, how we plan to be, man, the work will outgrow us. And not only will we be successful in transforming all of the communities and transforming all the spaces that we are connected to, but it'll also continue to transform as longer than we're gone. So, yeah, that's how I see it, man. That's what I see as far as the projection. Now, I wish I had Brother Eric's painting, man. It's a beautiful painting. We look at it every day. It's one of those like you hit it before you go out and play the game, man. But yeah, man, it's really just tied in that. It's tied in community. It's tied in community growth, man. And it's tied in seeing black folks prosper in every lane, in every area of that community.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I hold that vision with you. I did a Juneteenth poem this year, and we, as I was forecasting, I want to say the year in that poem was 2080, something like that, But yeah, we were out often in Ella Baker Community Center and a Father
There you
McKnight,
go.
incubator. So I mean, there's all sorts of things that was happening there. But yes, I share the projection and hold the vision with you. Hold the vision with Black Yield Institute. So folks, make sure that you go to the website blackyieldinstitute.org. Check them out
Yes,
on
sir.
Facebook. Check out the podcast. Check out the report, all the resources and content that are posted to the page. And if for some reason you haven't seen Strange Fruit, make sure you go back and check out Strange
Yes,
Fruit.
sir.
Continue to, dig into the legacy and the work that's happening. They're spawning from Cherry Hill, but, spreading throughout, the sector. So, I really appreciate you joining us today on this broadcast, Brother Lee. And
Sir.
and just like folks know, I keep a photo in many of my meetings of Chief John Horse, Black Seminole, member of the Seminole Nation, one of the war chiefs that led the Seminole Nation across the border of Mexico to lands of liberation when they decided that they were not going to be locked into a reservation. So I share and celebrate that with you as leading
Sir.
to liberated zones and continuing to
Sure.
hold that banner, that mantle.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
and I appreciate you joining the broadcast with us today.
Yes, sir, man. Thank you for having me, man. I'm happy we were able to get on. I was a little nervous when I rescheduled, but I'm glad. And it was the day after my birthday. Birthday was yesterday, so I was
Celebra-
excited to be able to still execute. So I'm glad we made it happen, man. I appreciate this a lot.
Absolutely, I appreciate yeah, happy celebratory. What do we have in Shabazz? I am forgetting our Shabazz chant for Well, never mind. I'm not going to try to dig into the Swahili in my head, at the
Okay.
moment. But yes, celebratory greetings to you. Appreciating that. And yeah, my brother's birthday is actually on Saturday, so yeah,
There
you're
you
right.
go,
You're
man.
right in the
That
town.
Sagittarius season, man.
Absolutely. So, thank you for joining us this evening. And I
Sir.
want to wish you good night.
Yes, sir. Good night, man. Appreciate it.
All right.
Peace.
Whew. All right, folks. That has been this evening's episode of the Ujamaa Hour. You saw me messing with all types of technical triggers and, doing better or worse for wear. So I thank you for joining us on this broadcast. This is the final kick for 2022. Unless I decide to do one of those Kwanzaa runs, which ain't really likely because I actually haven't sent out invitations for folks to talk to me during Kwanzaa. But if something kicks off, if you get in a mood, you might see me be after December 26th, between the 26th and January 1st, doing maybe one of my special editions. I do have a particular broadcast that I'm intrigued or interested to do, which is with Martine of Umedics and Latier Pifus of Womanist Working Collective, just examining the ways that that small that small black startup organizations go through their own internal procedures to develop a structure and a governance that works for them and that's accented with the values that they have picked up along the way, or that they have cultivated along the way. So I'm really interested in how these organizations structure and develop their own governance, right? These spaces didn't necessarily go out and do a bunch of workshops to get to their particular decision-making structures. They found tools that were meaningful to them, and oftentimes they are very well matched to the exact same tools that are being used in cooperative spaces, right? Or in solidarity economy spaces. The things that are equitable, the things that are liberatory, the things that are based and grounded in hearing all the voices in the room are oftentimes the tools that we find when we try to hear all the voices in the room, right? And so, yeah, that's what I want to leave y'all with. You know, we don't necessarily need to reinvent, and we don't need to apply rigor to try to get people to use the tools in the exact same way. We don't need to apply rigor to tell people that they are not doing their sociocracy right, or they're not doing their consensus right. Well, what we need to do is we actually just need to try to embody the values that we are professing, and try to hear the voices in the room, and try to involve people, and include people, and engage people. And oftentimes the systems that we develop will be the exact systems we need and the exact systems we want. So I'm kicking out of this broadcast, about 3 minutes earlier than I usually do. Usually I hang with you all to 8:45, but I won't do that tonight because I want to go to sleep. So yeah, I'm going to get out of here. This has been this December edition of the Ujamaa Hour. And, unless I do a special edition during Kwanzaa, I will see you all next year. Peace.